Well, hello everyone. I'm Jill Bloom, publisher of Roofing Contractor, Walls and Ceilings, and Building Enclosure. And thank you so much for joining us for this very important legal insight with Trent Cotney, the CEO of Cotney Attorneys and Consultants. And I'm here with my editor of Roofing Contractor, Art Eisner. And there's just been a lot to talk about. But first of all, Trent, thank you so much for joining us.
Jill, Art, it's always a pleasure. And yes, there is definitely a lot been happening in the news. So looking forward to our talk today.
Yeah, absolutely. So first of all, let's start with the town hall that happened last week. That was really exciting with NRCA and a whole bunch of manufacturers. Can you tell us who was on the line and what happened?
Yeah, so it was, a great thing that happened. NRCA, kind of took lead and they did a town hall. We had roughly 2,800 people on the line. We had 6 of the major manufacturers, CEOs and management level people, GAF, Carlisle, Firestone Jam, Sika, and OMG were on the line. And, it was a great time in that they got the opportunity to say their piece for purposes of what they were facing as far as material shortages and issues that they were dealing with. And then we had the opportunity to take about 30 minutes or so of questions. So, I want to thank, Reed, McKay, Rod Petrick, everybody at NRCA for putting it on. It's a dicey issue. It's a very heated political issue, a lot of different thoughts on all sides, but I do think it was valuable in that the manufacturers got to start the conversation. And if anything, it's a good starting point. Maybe we'll end up seeing more of these types of town halls in the future, or maybe have some future discussions. But anytime you're talking about things, it's a good thing. So I think it's a good start.
Well, it's amazing that how NRCA does these town halls, and every time I'm on the line, it's so impressive to hear how many people are on the phone and just how the whole thing is set up. But it is impressive, though, that all of those top people from those manufacturers were able to get on the line. I mean, Trent, has that ever happened before?
Yeah, I can't really think of one where we've had it that way. And they were all eager to get their voices heard as well. I mean, there's plenty of finger pointing to go around. Don't get me wrong, and I hear it every day. Obviously, I'm a lawyer. That's my job. I hear it. But we're also all being affected by this issue. So, there's no one in our industry that hasn't been affected, regardless of whether you're a contractor, distributor, manufacturer, what you do. So I think it was beneficial for them as well, because they got to voice some of their frustration, some of their concern, and the industry got to hear that as well. What was interesting from my standpoint is I felt like there was some transparency there, in that they were very consistent about that this is going to take a while. There was not this is going to be resolved in a month or two. We heard pretty consistently from them that this is going to continue to be an issue in 2022, and that they're doing their best to try to get things moving again. They've hit all-time production records this year, but the problem is that between the shutdowns before and the demand, it's just very difficult to catch up. So it was interesting, and again, I think it's a great start, and I hope everyone continues to have discussions about it. I think that's the only way that we're going to get through this as a whole.
Absolutely. Well, it's clear it's going to take a while. That was definitely a good takeaway. But so just coming off of Best of Success, and we had so many great contractors in the room with us. And Trent, thank you for speaking. You always have some great nuggets to share. It sounded like there was a lot of questions on contract negotiations, and I thought it might be a great opportunity to take a few minutes and talk about that.
Sure, absolutely. And, kudos to you, Jill, Art, Roofing Contractor Magazine. You guys did a fantastic job, Best of Success. Just an amazing event, great turnout, great speakers. And like always, every time I go to that event, there's always a handful of things I take back with me, and one of the things in the discussions that I had, both during the seminar and then afterwards, it was apparent to me that a lot of contractors out there don't understand the art of negotiation as it relates to contracts. And I guess the first thing I would say is, regardless of whether you're a residential or a commercial contractor, you always had the capability of negotiating. Okay, from the residential standpoint, you may want to look at upgrading certain factors, or you may have certain terms that are in your contract that the other side, the homeowner, doesn't like. Well, there are certain techniques and tactics you can use to try to put yourself in a better position. One of the things I love to do with homeowners is have a conversation using real world language about why you want something in your contract. So if you want a material price increase provision in there, explain why you want it. This is what it is, and this is what you're willing to do. You're willing to absorb the first 5 or 10%, but anything over that, you'd like some help on, right? On the commercial side, it was eye-opening in that a lot of the contractors out there are just taking these contracts from general contractors or owners and not marking them up, and because they're told they can't negotiate. Well, I don't believe in no, right? There's always a way around that. And one of the techniques and tactics I like to use is I like to incorporate a lot of the terms, legal terms, and I like to bury them within scope that's attached as an exhibit off into these contracts. So it's not directly in your face in the contract, but guess what it is? It's attached, and it's as much a part of the contract as the actual contract itself. So there are some techniques and tactics like that you can use, not just in roofing, but in the walls and ceiling space as well. We consistently get pushback a lot from drywallers and finishers that are out there that have their work damaged by other trades after they're gone. So making sure that you've got a provision that talks about who's going to be responsible for your work after you leave is important. Making sure that you document those existing conditions so that if there is a problem, you can refute it. All that kind of stuff is really good. The key message I want to send, Jill, to our listeners is you got to start playing the game. You got to realize first it's a game, and then you need to start playing it, okay? Because that's how you're going to be able to get off center, especially with some of the more difficult customers.
Great point. So let's just talk about drywall for a moment. So let's say I'm a drywall contractor and I've done everything and I've left the job. What should I do before I leave that job? Is there something that I sign off on with the building owner or the GC, or how should, what's that flow look like?
Sure. So, great question, Jill. For those of you who didn't know, I actually worked on a drywall crew to help make my way through college. I got paid cash on the table, but don't tell anybody that. The statutes run on that one, so I'm good there.
Okay.
So, one of the problems that I always had when I was on the crew is that we did a lot of residential, right? And you go in there and you knock the stuff out, and then, like I said, inevitably you get someone in that screws up your finish, right? So part of the issue,
like the electrician or something.
Yeah, electrician, even the painters screw stuff up. You would think all you gotta do is paint, but they end up messing it up, and then you get blamed for it, right? Everybody points the finger at the drywaller. So from a residential standpoint, you can have an owner sign off on it, right? You can have a doc saying, inspect it, say, is this good? Everything good? Have them sign it. Yes, it's good. But I also like to make sure I'm taking plenty of photographs. I'm showing exactly what happened. I'm showing what that finish is. I'm taking measurements, because that's another thing. Is a lot of times they say, well, this wall's off center. It's not where it needs to be, or this is off, that's off. Take those measurements, you throw that rule up there, you throw the level up there, you take the photo, you got it in case you need it. Commercial side, Jill, there you're actually probably getting some sign off from a GC that's doing inspections. Okay, so you want to get that sign off, or you want to get that sign off from that commercial owner to make sure that they've approved whatever that work is. But the key thing is you've got to look at your contract, and there will be a provision in there, commercial contracts, that say it is your responsibility to safeguard your own work. You need to put a little thing in there, say, unless I have already gotten the sign off and I'm off the job. So once you demobilize, it should no longer be your job to make sure that your drywall is okay. So there are several publicly traded general contractors out there that love to take that exact provision and stick it to the drywallers. So watch out for that. Make sure that you edit that, and then obviously document that. The documentation, photos, measurements, all that stuff, it applies regardless of what the project is. It's just good sense, right? But the key is you got to have those contract provisions, because even if you walk off that job, they may still stick it to you.
I love it. Well, I think, yeah, the game. We're going to talk more about that game, right, Art?
In that instance, is there kind of a legal grace period? I realize it may vary from state to state, or you have to explicitly state in your contract when you are officially off that job.
Yeah, the key thing is you don't want to be responsible for something that you can't prevent. So I'll give you a great example. You know, we're representing a contractor right now. This is a roofing contractor. Completed big commercial job, beautiful roof system. They're done with the job, and then they got notification from a very large general contractor that, you know, the roof is destroyed. So they're looking at it, they're going, what's going on with this roof? Well, come to find out, the general contractor allowed a scissor lift to be run on the roof. Well, yeah, I mean, that's freaking nuts, right? Who would ever do that? And then they point to that provision. They say, oh, well, you're responsible for safeguarding your own work, and therefore I'm like, nah. You can't run heavy equipment on a roof and expect us to do it. And you guys had quality control people out there. So the key is thinking about this stuff in advance. A lot of understanding where you're going to be in the middle of a contract is taking the time at the beginning to not just look at scope, not just look at the price, but understand those key terms that deal with things like whose responsibility it is to identify plan errors and design problems, whose responsibility it is to safeguard work. You know, what is the claims process? What is the delays process? Because like I said, at Best of Success, all of our contractors out there are so focused on that top line number of sales that they forget a lot of what actually makes them money. Legal is the difference between making money on a job and losing it. That's really it. It's the legalese, because that's what gets you on the back end. That's what gets you, that final payment is due and they say, oh, no, we're back charging you for whatever, right? So understanding and navigating that legal, that's ultimately what will keep money in your pocket. That's what I want to hit home to everybody. It's not just a nuisance. You know, everybody hates lawyers, I get it. But if you focus on that, if you shore up some of these things, especially in difficult times, it'll end up saving you money.
Trent, it was a great presentation. There was a lot of information packed in there, and some tactics too, including the big pasta lunches. So I would encourage anybody to definitely check that out on roofingcontractor.com on demand. One of the things that stuck with me was something that's a little unconventional when you said sometimes it's the customer that you don't take that can make you a successful business owner. Can you break down that thought a little bit?
Sure. So my dad's a very wise man, and he told me a long time ago, he said, son, it's the customers you don't take that make his successful business. And I had no idea what he meant until 10 years ago. I opened my own business, and now I know exactly what he means. Okay. And what he meant by it is you spend a lot of time and effort that could be devoted elsewhere. You spend a lot of time chasing money. A lot of times you get clients or you get projects that aren't good. And those are the ones that can close your doors. Those are the ones that hurt you, that take your eye off of where you really need to be. Okay. So if you, a bad tendency that a lot of contractors have, regardless of whether you're, building envelope roofing, whatever you are, is that when times get tough, you go out and you bid more and you take whatever there is on the street, right? You just take it all. Okay. A great example is a roofing contractor taking any GC work that's out there. GC work is great. It keeps a lot of people in business, but it's low margin, right? And there's not a lot of room for error. And if you contract with the wrong general contractor, we all know who they are. You're going to regret it, right? Because it's going to be a pain in the butt. You're going to get slow paid or no paid. And that's the kind of thing is you got to know who you're doing business with. Don't be afraid to walk away from a bad customer. You see the warning signs a mile away, walk away from them.
All right. Great advice. Thanks, Trent.
Mm-hmm.
Go ahead, Art. You want to?
So let me bring something else up that I thought, our contractors should know. And this is something that we've been getting a lot of calls about is the Biden administration, when he came out with that mandate, he said that if you're working on federal jobs, you got to be vaccinated. Well, it was either earlier this week. I think it was earlier this week or last week. They came out and said that deadline is December 8th. So I got a lot of contractors calling me in a panic saying, what do I do? What's the loopholes? And I'm like, brother, I don't know what to tell you, man. There aren't any loopholes. You got to do it. He's like, and the questions I'm getting asked are, is this going to be legally challenged? It might, but I don't know. It's a federal mandate. It is coming up very quick, and December doesn't seem like it's a far away, but it'll be here like that. So a lot of contractors are very concerned about that, and it snuck up on a lot of people.
So you're saying though, Trent, is there's no workarounds in regards to natural immunity or
right now? No, I mean, look, you got, if you're talking about employees, you've got, religious exemptions, you've got medical reasons, you got all this other stuff, but this is a federal mandate. If you are a federal contractor working on a federal job, you must be vaccinated by December 8th. That's it. So, it's a tough one. Will it be legally challenged that stops it? Maybe. But I don't know. A lot of crews out there were already vaccinated for purposes of doing federal contracting work. So I don't know to what extent it's going to affect the rest of the industry, but it's a big deal. And not just that, but here's something else that snuck out that I think our listeners would probably be very interested in. The Biden administration had an agenda that I was very concerned with as it relates to construction. And because of Afghanistan, because of COVID-19, a lot of these other things, it's gotten sidetracked. Well, we're starting to see some of the things roll out. Okay, one of those things is the OSHA heat, injury, and illness standard. Okay, for the longest time, OSHA has looked at heat, illness, and injury, heat exhaustion, that kind of stuff on job sites, but done it through a general duty clause, right? But what they said just late last week was that they were going to start looking into doing rulemaking, creating a specific rule on heat injury and a national emphasis program. So here's where it gets tricky. Okay, I'm getting to something. Okay, here it is. So OSHA said that what they want to do is that if you have a heat index of over 80 degrees Fahrenheit, that gives them justification to go on a job site and ask questions about water, ask questions about hydration, what are your breaks? What kind of shade do you offer? What kind of training have you done on it? Basically giving OSHA anywhere where it's 80 degrees or more, the opportunity to walk on your job, even if they don't see anything wrong. Okay. Normally they have to fall within a few categories in order to get out to your job site. There's got to be imminent danger. There's got to be a complaint. It's got to be a referral. It's got to be, fatality or an injury. It's got to be within one of their emphasis programs, which are saying this is going to be. But what concerns me is that, in Florida, 80 degrees is a nice winter day. There are certain states, Texas and Florida, the South, that that's going to hit a lot worse than it's going to hit these northern states, right? And the other thing is it doesn't take into account employee privacy rights, not necessarily employer, but some employees have privacy rights. Are you just going to go out there and start asking questions about what they do, how they do it, all this kind of stuff? The one thing that I have seen, we've handled a lot of fatalities as it relates to heat injury. And I am always shocked that the majority of the fatalities occur in the north and Chicago and areas that aren't warm. And it happens when there is a warm streak because they're not used to warmer weather, right? Where 90 degrees may be incredibly difficult for roofing contractors that are doing work in Minnesota. 105 is nothing for somebody in Orlando, right? Because we're used to that kind of heat. So there are going to be a lot of big issues coming out on these heat, injury, illness standard. I want our listeners to make sure they're paying attention to it because I don't like giving OSHA open access, basically using that as a justification, sort of a stop and frisk type policy where they can just come in and then all of a sudden, they're looking at your fall protection, they're looking at your scaffolding, they're looking at your PPE, and they're using that as a basis to get on the job site. So that caught my eye. We've already got Craig Brightup, our lobbyist, looking into it as well. It's something that a lot of people weren't paying attention to.
Great insight for sure. Well, there's always great things to talk about with you, Trent, and we always appreciate your time. And we look forward to next year when we are at Best of Success again with you. But I know, don't worry, anybody who's watching or listening, because you're going to hear a lot from Trent before then. But just to do a quick shout out, Best of Success in 2022 is going to be December 4th to the 6th. So won't be quite so hot like you're talking about with OSHA there, but you never know. We're going to be in Scottsdale, but
Nice.
anyway, but if you have any questions for Trent, make sure you reach out to him at cottonecl.com. There's tons of great resources there and some incredible information to see, as well as all the awards that Trent has won this year. If you have any questions for us, please reach out to us at roofingcontractor.com, wconline.com, or buildingenclosureonline.com. And while you're there, make sure you sign up for our website, which is free. Then register for our e-magazines, which are awesome. There's some really great new platforms we have. But most importantly, please stay safe and healthy, and we'll talk to you next time.